Aloha, it's CreativeNameToStandOut again with another battle report. This time I'm bringing you a 2,500 point game between my Dark Elves and an opponent's Skaven. Before we go into the game and deployment, I just want to talk about this river. First of all, I love Gale Force 9's products. These are the rivers, of course. I have all the pieces that you could possibly have for the river, that I'm aware of at least. And I could really recommend them to anybody. I'm not going to do a proper review because I don't order them directly from Gale Force 9. The local shops here have all the pieces, and I just went ahead and bought from them. Other than that, as far as the game is concerned, I don't own any bridges, despite the fact that I love rivers. So for the purpose of this game, we're going to extend those crossings here in the river to kind of be connected. So it's going to be all open terrain between the two rocks. And I'm probably going to continue to play it that way until I find a proper bridge to buy. So just want to give you guys a heads up, and let's go ahead and jump into deployment. First, we go ahead and zoom in to the right flank where we see that I have 2 units of Dark Riders. We move to the center. There's a chariot, 40 dread spears, then 21 witches with the Cauldron of Blood inside of it. We move to the left flank and we have a Hydra, a chariot, then 34 executioners with a BSB inside of it. Now, this particular placement was a poor decision on my part. Because I should have deployed them on the main line, but I didn't leave any space for them to be deployed without hindering them in terrain. I could have placed them in a swamp, or I could have placed them in an open space that would eventually advance into the river, and I didn't want to deal with that. So instead, I decided to place them behind these 2 units, which could be a bad thing, maybe even worse, because that chariot could become stupid, and that would really clog up my left flank. So here's an overview of my opponent's deployment. Now, before we go into his deployment specifically, just want to let you guys know that at the moment that I'm making this part of the video, I do not have a copy of my opponent's list. So I can't really remember the names of all the specific units, but I'll try my best, and please forgive me. So we start over on the left flank and we see that he has a Doom Wheel, then a Rat Pack, and then a unit of slaves. Now you'll tell the difference between the slaves and the clan rats because the slaves will lack the uniformity in color that you'll see the clan rats have. We move over to the right and you can see, like I was talking about, a uniformed pink with these clan rats. They have a weapons team attached to them. It's the flamethrower weapon, and he has a warlock attached to him also. In the center of his lines, he has another unit of clan rats with the warrior with the weapons team attached. It's also a flamethrower. Then his storm vermin are the center. He has a bell with a gracier on top, and there's a BSB inside there. Next to the storm vermin will be a abomination, and then beside the abomination is another unit of slaves. We move further down to the right and we can see another rat pack, a doom wheel, and in the back we have the cannon. So that makes up his deployment. We see another overview of the board with both of our armies in it. And we move in to see where I moved up my shades. So I put them behind the tree here. And then finally we go in the vanguard phase, and I of course push my fast cav forward. Alright, so in this part of the video we're going to talk about my game plan. I'm going to spend a little bit more time than I usually do on this aspect of the video for 2 reasons. One, I feel as if I have a unique perspective on Skaven based on my background. And then number 2, I have had a comment or 2 about how they would like to see the videos extended just slightly longer than I usually have them, just so that I can provide a little bit of insight on why I do some things that I do. So that's what I'm going to do right here real quick. It won't be terribly longer, but it's going to be a little bit longer. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attack the latter rather than the former. So in regards to why do I do some of the things that I do in general, and this is going to get frowned upon, I'm more of a reactionary player. I don't always, even though I tell you guys that I do, have a grand game plan when I set up the game. I'm sure that's also pretty obvious based on some of the decisions that I do. But a lot of times I'm the type of player that kind of just responds to how the game develops as it's developing. So that's going to have, its negatives, it's going to have its positives. I'll let you guys judge that how you will, but that's just the type of player that I am. I am a reactionary player more than I am a set in stone game plan type of player. As far as the former is concerned, my unique perspective is really just based on how I learned how to play fantasy in general. When I first started playing fantasy, the person who taught me had a Skaven army, so I exclusively played Skaven for about my first 20 to 25 games. And then beyond that, it just so happens that the places that I've moved to and lived, it seems like I hit the disproportionately high end of the population that plays Skaven. So, for example, here where I live, out of maybe the 6 players that I play on a regular basis, I would say 3 of them have Skaven armies. So I just get a lot of perspective, or what do I say, a lot of exposure against Skaven. So that helps, I guess, inform my game plan going forward in this game. Alright, so what does this all mean going forward into this particular game? Well, it means I'm going to contradict myself. So whereas, as already established beforehand, I'm a reactionary player, when it comes to playing Skaven, I've learned to be the polar opposite of that. It's all about target prioritization to the extreme. No matter how the table is going to develop, I'm always going to have a certain set of targets that I'm going to look to get rid of as quickly as possible, or at least just to deal with them first before I start dealing with the meat of the Skaven army. Alright, so when we look at the Skaven overall, we can see that they have a lot of high risk, high reward type of units. And that would include their Doom Wheels, their Doom Rocket, their Magic, the Abomination, the Lightning Cannon, all these things, maybe not the Abomination, but all these things have a kind of a high risk, high reward things. They're either going to devastate your army in one phase, or they're going to completely cripple their own. And when you play Skaven, you kind of just accept that fact. You kind of go into it and go, you know what, in 6 turns, one of these crazy things are going to go off, and it's really going to hinder my army. And you don't let that get to you, but what you do take from that is you realize you don't want to fence Skaven. You want to punch their fists with your fists. You want to just take them head on, because if you fence with the Skaven, then that crippleization really comes into a maximum effect. And so what I'm trying to convey through this idea that you punch fists with fists is that I'm saying you look at these high risk, high reward units, you realize that on a tactical level that these units are expendable, and the player can lose them, and it won't really affect the game that much. But when you look at the game in a strategic level and you view these things as a category, and you take them out as a whole, then you defang the beast. And after you defang the beast, there's not much left to them. So that's what I mean by target prioritization being extremely important against Skaven, and why that changes me as a player when I play them. Even in, this is a fun game, but that's what impresses me about them. So that's what I'm going to do in this game, and I hope, that is a very satisfying explanation about why I do the things in this game, and we'll see how it works out. So my opponent wins the roll-off to see who gets to go first, and of course he takes it. He starts with his random movement phase, since he doesn't have any charges. And this Doom Wheel on the far right, he probably wanted it to go pretty far. I was definitely in range for him to get a first turn charge if he rolled pretty well. But of course he doesn't. He actually rolls really low. Conversely, in the center we have the Abomination just shoot it up further than he probably wants him to. And then on the other side we have the other Doom Wheel that shoots up it fairly far, and probably not the thing he wanted over there. In the move phase, he only really moves this slave unit, trying to keep my Dark Riders honest. As you can see here, everything else stays the same, and we go ahead and jump in the magic phase. So we roll up the dice. Before we start casting magic, my opponent rings the bell, and he gets off the effect that gives his whole army leadership rerolls. He then casts the Dread 13th with Irresistible Force, and that ends up killing about 18 Dread Spears and putting a wound both on his Warlock and his Seer. So after that we jump into the shooting phase. His Doom Wheels aren't close enough to shoot any of my units, so he really just goes back and chooses to shoot with his Lightning Cannon. He targets my Cauldron of Blood, and then he misfires and blows up. So with the Lightning Cannon blowing up, that's really helping out my game plan, that extreme of target prioritization that I'm going to go with this game. So that's 1 down, 4 more to go. I am now going to pretty much do things that go along that type of strategy, even though I don't really have a favorable matchup. So I'm going to charge the Chariot into the Abomination, just hoping to suicide some wounds through. Then I'm also going to double charge with the Hydra and the Chariot into the Doom Wheel to hurry up and get that out of the way. I don't have any way of really dealing with that other Doom Wheel. I am going to back up a little and take some shots, hoping that maybe I can trigger that out of control result. I am going to take the other unit of Dark Riders over across. They're going to lose 2 to the river. The river, by the way, is a necrotic river, so it gives poison to any unit that goes through it. So they're going to run across, and they're going to try to kill that weapons team, but more importantly, they're just going to be a nuisance to his main battle line. I don't want them to, I don't want those, what are they called, storm vermin moving up and supporting that abomination that's out of position. So other than that, I move everything else forward, as you can see here, and we go into the magic phase. I have 2 goals in the magic phase. I want a quick, decisive win against that Doom Wheel, so I cast a large level Word of Pain against it. I then want to try to kill off that Warlock if I can get away with it, so I cast Blade Wind, but my opponent stops it. In the combat phase, we have the Hydra and Chariot easily finish off that Doom Wheel, and then they turn to face, and then over on the other side, I do 2 wounds to the Abomination, but of course it kills off the Chariot. We go into Skaven turn 2. Here's an overview of the board. As you can see here, he has the Abomination with a perfect flank charge into my witches, but before he can do that, he needs to declare some charges. He wants to, of course, support the Abomination later turn, so he needs to get those fast kiv out of the way. He's going to charge them. I'm going to flee, and unfortunately, even though it was a pretty good roll for him, he actually catches the Dark Riders, and now he, as you can see in this picture, he really blocked off his Abomination from getting into the witches. So it's really going to delay him a turn. That's actually going to work out perfect for me. He, of course, has no other choice, so he charges the Abomination into the Spear Elves. I, of course, didn't really anticipate this from happening, but I wanted to protect my Spear Elves as much as possible, so I put him in the river for the poison benefit. Other than that, we go to other charges, and his only other charge is with his Rat Pack. He charges them into the shades over on the far right of the table. And then beyond that, we have some movement. His Doom Wheel moves forward. He's going to take some shots at the Dark Riders. And then in this last picture, I'm just showing you that he's trying to support the Storm Vermin by moving his Clan Rats there on the left and his slaves in the rear. Alright, so we jump into the magic phase, and he's going to use 2 of his tokens in this part of the game. He's going to use one to help cast Scorch, but not much help because he fails it. Then he's going to use another one to help cast the Dread 13th. He's going to get that off irresistibly. Now he's going to kill very little, not very many executioners at all, and then he's going to get himself sucked into the warp, so I do count myself lucky. And then the luck also comes back again for me when he shoots off the Doom Rocket, and it only kills, I think, another 8 or 9. So, you know, pretty lucky to get through that relatively unscathed. I mean, that was a lot of guys that died, but it could have been much, much worse. In other shooting, we have the Flamethrower kill off 5 of my witches. We see the Dark Riders get zapped 3 times and lose 3 of their own. And then here's an overview of the board before we go to combat. He rolls up impact hits, and he rolls very poorly, as you can see in this picture. But in the end, it doesn't matter. He's going to beat them. I can't be steadfast because of the river. I managed to do 2 wounds to him, though, and that's a win in my book. But they flee, and he fails to catch them. So here's another overview of the board going into Dark Elf turn 2. And I'm going to declare a couple of charges here. I'm going to charge the Hydra into the Skaven slaves. They're going to flee from terror. That's going to give me a chance to redirect into the warriors. And then I'm also going to charge the Chariot into the weapons team. So when we do that, you can see that I make it to the weapons team but fall short of the warriors. So I go ahead and take advantage of my opponent's misfortune, and I charge the witches into the Skaven. I then set up a reaction for my executioners. When the Abomination turns to face to hit my witches in the flank, I want them there to counter charge. So we go into the magic phase, and it's pretty much a flop for me. I roll really low for my first spell on my level 4, so that puts her out of it. I try to 6 dice for your Arcane, and my opponent just uses this as a Dispel Scroll. So other than that, we go into shooting. I think I plink a wound on the Doom Wheel, but it doesn't go out of control. And then I try to wound the Abomination, but I fail. Alright, so with that, we go into combat, and if you remember from last turn, the bell rang and gave all his Storm Vermin +1 attack. We're going to lay into each other and do a ton of damage. I get knocked down, as you can see in this picture, down to 1 rank. I, of course, kill quite a few of his Storm Vermin, and I put 5 wounds out of 6 on his bell. So he's pretty much devastated. I'm pretty much devastated. Unfortunately, I can't win the attrition game, so and that I have that Abomination coming into my flank. So hopefully, you know, things will continue going in my favor, but I cannot stay here for too long. Alright, so we'll go into Skaven turn 3, and as you can see, the Chariot easily defeated the weapons team and over into the other pink Clan Rats. These blue Clan Rats declared a charge against the Sorceress. Now, my opponent really didn't want to do that charge. He was just hoping to punk her away and then redirect into the witches. But I decided to stick because it was a pretty long charge, and you know, I haven't learned my lesson from other times of deciding to do that. But this time it worked out. He failed, and it really prevented him from doing what he really wanted to do, which was to charge the witches in the flank. Meanwhile, we go over to the random movement phase, I guess, and the abomination does in fact hit me in the other flank, and the doom wheel moves around and hits the shades in the rear. Alright, so before we go into the magic phase, the gutter runners show up finally, and he's going to try to kill off these dark riders. In the magic phase, since he's already lost his grace here, he can't do a lot. The bell does go off and cast Scorch. I do stop it with 2 dice. He then casts Scorch again with his Warlock, and I Dispel Scroll it. Though I did stop the Scorches, I can't stop the flamethrowers, so when the flamethrower goes off, I think he kills off, it looks like 6 executioners. They're forced to take a panic check, and unfortunately they break, and that's bad news for me because they were there to help support the witches after the abomination makes its charge. Alright, since we're talking about it, let's just go ahead and look at this combat. He, of course, has the abomination in my flank, but things end up going pretty well for me since he has so many wounds to give on the Skaven Bell Stormvermin side. I'm able to actually win this combat. He, of course, is stubborn and will stick, but I do wipe out that unit to take that last wound off the bell, and I turn to face. Alright, so after that combat, we go to the Doom Wheel, and it easily kills off all the shades, and we end up in Dark Elf turn 3. So in turn 3, turn 2, those Gutter Runners did try to kill off my Dark Riders, but the Storm Banner has been up since turn 1, and it still hasn't gone away yet, and that really hurt his shooting over there, so it helped them stay alive. And with that, I'm just going to take these 2 Dark Riders, throw them to the back of the Abomination, hope for the best. In this picture, we see my Chariot still sticking in there against those Clan Rats. It had overrun from the weapons team, did enough damage, and my opponent's turn to stick. And then the Hydra charged the slaves off the board, and the idea was to redirect into the Clan Rats to help out the Chariot, but I failed my redirect check. Over here we have my Executioners rallying, and then my level 4 moves over to get next to them. Not enough movement to actually join them, unfortunately. There in that Abomination combat, I cast Word of Pain, the big level 1, to reduce the strength and initiative and weapon skill. I then try to cast a 1 dice Cauldron of Blood spell on the witches, but I fail. We go to the combats already, and with the Chariot not having the charge this turn, I'm just going to try to assassinate that Warlock Engineer, and that's what I do. I kill him off, I lose, and I flee. And then over here in this combat with the Abomination, the Word of Pain actually didn't come into play that much. I actually rolled really well, and I was able to finish off the Abomination before it got to strike. So here I am reforming, and we're going to go into Skaven turn 4. So we go into Skaven 4, and my opponent does a whole series of charges that kind of ping-pongs my Chariot across the board in different directions. The Chariot ends up here, as you can see, and then at the end of the day, the Blue Warriors actually rolled high enough to catch them. And it also opened up a gap for the slaves to run in and charge my witches in the cauldron. On the other side of the board, the Doom Wheel somehow wrecks itself in the river, and then he moves up his Gutter Runners to take some shots at the Executioners, kills a bunch of them, and we move on to combat. Now in combat phase, the slaves I don't think do any wounds to me, but they lose badly, they explode, and kill the rest of my witches. So we go into Dark Elf turn 4, I declare a charge of the Dark Riders into the Gutter Runners, and the Cauldron into the Clan Rats. I would have charged the Executioners in the Clan Rats, but then he would have fled, leapt Frog, one of the units, and neither unit would have gotten into combat with them. Also, with the Dark Riders making it, only one makes it in. I started in their flank, but they could still kind of see me with their stand and shoot, so I lose one going in, and then I flip my Hydra around so that I can blow some flames on those Clan Rats. Alright, so we jump in the magic phase, and it's very successful, but it's also very inconsequential. I cast some spells that will strip a couple wounds here and there. I boost myself into a combat that it's already in my favor, so it's not that big of a deal. We go into the shooting phase, I blow fire on these Clan Rats from the Hydra, I kill a score of them, and they flee. Jump into combat, and things just start avalanching in my favor. He whiffs completely over here, I kill one, they break and run away. And so my opponent pretty much calls it here. After he loses combat here, he's steadfast with the Clan Rats against the Cauldron. He breaks, unfortunately, and I run him down. So after that, there wasn't really a lot of point playing any further, so I'll do a little post-game wrap-up, and then we'll conclude the video. Alright, with that, it's pretty much a Dark Elf victory, obviously. I think the thing we want to take away from this game is the occurrence of when something seemingly fantastic happens, it ends up being your downfall. So, you know, it was just, the Dark Riders just fled the perfect distance. He just happened to catch them, and that seems like it's a good thing. But at the end of the day, that really just set up the victory in my favor. So it was no fault of my opponent. It was just pure happenstance, and it was a really good game. So with that, I hope you guys liked this video. I'd enjoy your comments. I thank you for all your subscriptions. And again, thanks for watching.